We were talking about the basics of Python, and unfortunately, I could not record the previous lecture. But anyway, so today we will continue our discussion from the last class. And okay, let me just switch over. So we were having a discussion about Python variables and uh, and let's see what all we can do today further. Uh, so we talked about the command line, and we talked about numbers, the floating point and other. The math operator. Okay, so at least those who are there, I hope some of you would have explored uh, the math operator, especially because there was some confusion between the division and the integer division. So I hope you would have tried to do something about that. Then we went on to talk about different Python expressions. Um, okay, and then we talked about variables. We started talking about variables. So what we saw in case of variables is the naming conventions and how the variables are named. So we saw that the variables begin with a letter or underscore, and then they are followed by letters, numbers, or underscore. So the only rule is that you should not use a number in the beginning of a variable name. And the naming conventions, if you see, so we use the snake case. So usually the variables are small letters, and if it is multi-word, we use underscore to join them. And then we have the lowercase. We generally go for the lowercase, and we use the camel case in case of class, which we will talk about when we talk about objects. Maybe in BioPython you will encounter such convention. And if you're having some sort of constant in your code, you should generally go for a capital letters. And then we saw the double underscore we use in the beginning and the end for private variables. So now let's talk about the different data types that are available in Python, and you can see the names of some of these data types. So we have the int, which stands for the integer, okay, and then we have bool for boolean, okay. So we have true or false, and then a string is for a sequence of Unicode characters. So the Unicode characters, because it mentions Unicode, so it could be English alphabet, it could be other languages as well. So it might help you to store any sort of Unicode characters for that matter. Okay, and after that, you see some other derived data types. You can see there is a list. We will talk about list extensively later on, and then we have a dictionary, which is basically a key value pair mapping over here. Okay, so integers, boolean, string. We also have a floating point as well. Okay, so it's not mentioned here, but then I will probably talk about it a bit later. Then let's talk about the property of dynamic typing. So the Python variables are very flexible, unlike C, where you usually have the data type set from the beginning. It has to be an integer C or float C or char C. So you've set the type of the variables in the beginning. But Python is very flexible, so you can assign a lot of variables, I mean different variables, and accordingly it takes up different types over here. So for example, here we have awesomeness is a variable. We assign it the value true. So when you put in true, it becomes a boolean type, okay, and then you could print that out. If you assign a string to it, so string is the one that has a double quote around it, so it becomes a string, okay, and then there is a none type as well. So none in Python represents, I mean, it's a value which represents nothing, okay. So I don't know if some of you would have taken a database management class, so you would have come across null, which represents nothing. So here none represents nothing. So you could use none. So if you have not, I mean, decided to put some value inside a variable, you can assign it as none. And then we have the floating point over here. So the idea over here is that every time the value we assign to the variable, that becomes its type over here. Okay. So to demonstrate some of these facts, let me try to see if my browser is open. Just a moment. Yeah, so if I have the, let me use the Google Colab today to demonstrate some of these types over here. So we are talking about data types. Okay, so yeah. And let me start taking a variable name. So let me say my var. Okay, so my variable. So suppose we begin with numbers. So 123, random number. So let me run. Okay, and then it runs over here. And every time I am going to run this, I am going to check the type. Okay, so just to show you what is going to be the type. So there is a delay over here because the Google Colab is getting connected to the server. Okay, so the RAM is assigned and this has run. Okay, so now let me add another line over here. So let's do type of my var. Okay, so type my var is going to tell you what is the data type that is stored inside my var, and you should be able to see int. Okay, so the same my var, if we take my underscore var and we assign it some sort of um, uh, value. So let's say biopython, and then let's type my var. Okay, and let's run this. So you see now it is going to give me str. Str stands for string. Okay, str stands for string. And then the same variable I can take and suppose I do 3.14159. Okay, and then let's try to see the type of my var. Okay, and then okay, and you see it's a floating type. So the same variable you see I am using again and again to do this, and finally let me try to assign it to boolean value. So boolean, there are two types of values, either it's true or false. So the capital, it always has to start with the T caps. Okay, so TRUE. So and then let's see the type of my var. Okay, and then let's run, and you can see it is going to tell us that bool stands for boolean. Okay, and finally my var equals none. None again is a keyword which stands for the none type. Okay, and then let's see the type for my var over here, right? And then you should be able to see the none type. So you can see there are various different types. And then there are complex data types. I will currently not cover that. Let's yeah, we will, whenever it is required, I will talk about it. Okay. Okay. All right. So this is the question now. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. So is the following valid Python code? There has to be a question mark. Yeah. So I am string equals hello world. I am string 73. I am string true. Okay. Yeah. So what do you think it is? This is any can probably just offer us answer true or false if this is Python valid Python code. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah. So whether this is true or false? Quite simple. Is this 3 lines of code, is it valid Python code or not? But you need not wait for anyone. Whatever you feel, you could probably tell.
So I guess it's false.
Why would it be false? Any suggestions? I mean, like your thoughts why it could be false?
So like I can see hello world and then 73.
Hmm.
And then it's showing that it's true. And then it's showing true.
Yeah, yeah.
So like hello world, it doesn't like have any connection with 73.
No. Okay. All right. So the point over here is we are not talking about the I mean meaning. We are simply checking whether the code is valid or not. So in the first attempt, I am assigning hello world to I am string, so which makes the I am string a string variable. Okay, and then in the next line, I assign 73 to I am string, which makes it a integer variable. And in the next line, I assign true to I am string, which makes it into a Boolean variable. So all of these lines are actually valid. Okay? All of these lines are valid. So the answer to this question is true because the following Python code is true. Okay? It's all valid. These are all valid statements. We have assigned a string, then integer, and then a Boolean variable. Okay. Next. So the next thing is declaring a string. Already I showed you an example with my var. I assigned a particular value to it. So in assigning strings, we generally either use a single quotes or a double quotes, but don't mix it up. So either you use double quotes or you use single quotes. Both of them are valid. For example, my underscore other underscore str is a hat, so that's a valid Python string. But here we have used single quotes, whereas my underscore str is a valid Python string with double quotes around it over here. So make sure you either use double quotes or single quotes. Don't mix both of them up over here. So we have a short exercise over here, and let's try to attempt that. Let me get my yeah, move it. Yeah. Okay. So let's try to answer this question. Okay, let me make it full screen. So we have 4 statements over here. So some basic stuff. If you wish, you could do it along with me, or later on when you have the slide, you can try them as well. Okay. All right. So the first. So let me just add text over here. So we are doing exercise 1. Okay. And then let's add some code. Okay. So the first question being asked over here is define a variable city and set it equal to any string. Okay. So obviously city, let's set it to Bhubaneswar. Okay. And yeah, I can run that. All right. And then let's uh, add another code. So here define a variable price and set it equal to any floating point value. Okay. So price So let me just set it to 100.25. Okay, floating point is any number with a decimal. So this is also a valid statement and it runs. Then we have define a variable high score and set it equal to any integer. Okay, so let's put up another one. So high score, and let's set it up say about 100. Okay, so I'm just setting it to an integer over here. And finally, another simple exercise is having fun and set it equal to any boolean value. Okay, so is having fun, and let's set it to true. Okay, so these are all valid statements. So what I attempted to show you over here is we are able to create variables and we are able to assign them different values. So the first one we assigned a string, then we assigned a float, integer, and then boolean values are assigned over here. Next. So usually when you are putting in strings, there are some escape characters which are also called as meta characters. They help you to do something extra. For example, like we have something called /n. If you have done a bit of C and Java, you will know /n represents a new line. Okay, so for example, we have this statement new line hello /n world, and then we are trying to print it out. What it prints is it prints hello and then world in the next line over here. So I could try this out. Let's see. Let's add some more code. Okay, and let's take up a new variable. New line equals hello. Okay, and in the middle I put in /n followed by world. Okay, and then let's try to print new underscore line. So when I run this, you can see we have hello, and in the next line we have world. So /n acts as a new line character. And then sometimes we want to escape out characters. If some characters have special meaning, we can always put a slash before that, and that escapes out the or makes it into a escape character. So you can use things like this. So you can hexadecimal number slash followed by a small x. So /x41, x42, and x43 is actually a representation of ABC. Okay, so sometimes you would need some operations, maybe in some cases where you could use hexadecimal, octal, or different number systems to work this out over here. Okay, so let's see another problem over here. String concatenation. So if you are trying to join different strings, okay, so here we have two strings over here. So string 1 is your, and then we have string 2 is space. If you use plus with two strings, then it acts as concatenation or to join. Okay, it joins two different strings over here. Okay, so let's suppose I have this first name. Okay, first name equals Atul, and then last name equals Nag. Okay, and then if I do something like this, okay, I'm using a print statement, even though I might not need one. First name, and then I do a plus with a gap and a plus with last underscore name over here. So basically what I want to do is I want to join this name over here with a space followed by a last name, and if you see the output you will be able to see that. So Atul Nag is printed over here again. Okay, so plus again is used for concatenation, so you could just remember that, and we can do a lot of other things with this as well. So if you can see on the screen, we can use the plus equal to operator. So the task of the plus equal to, let's see over here. So suppose we have str1 equals ice, and then we write str1 plus equals ice cream. So we have two words, there is ice which is present inside str1, and then we write plus equals cream. So what happens when you do plus equals? So it takes whatever is in the right hand side, adds it to whatever is there in str1, and assigns it back into str1 over here. Okay, so let's try to replicate that. For you to follow, str1 equals ice. Okay, in the next line I write str underscore 1 plus equals, and then I write cream over here, and then let's print the value of str underscore 1 over here. Okay, so let's see what is the output, and then you can see it's ice cream. Now str1 plus equals cream, it can also be rewritten as str underscore one plus. Okay, so this means the other one. Okay, so plus equal to actually means str equals str plus cream. So this also you would understand in the same way. This is the value ice which gets added to another string and gets reassigned into str1. So instead of writing it so long, you can do something like this, plus equals, and then you can remove entire thing. Now this plus equals, as you can see, the usage over here can also be used with integers, can be used with floating points as well. Okay, so something that you can keep in mind over here. Another thing you can see over here, cannot add strings to other types. You cannot add a string with an integer, you cannot add a string with a float, and you get a sort of error over here. Let's see what error you get in that particular case. So suppose I'm going to add a first name, okay, which is I have declared over here first name, and then I want to add 23 or something like that. Okay, so let's see what error we get. Okay, and already it indicates the error. So the error that we get generally, if you have such an error, is type error. Okay, so what is the type error? What does it say? That str cannot be concatenated, int cannot be concatenated to str over here. So now one way to do it is put double quotes around it. So that makes it into a string, and then you could try, and it adds 23 to first name, whatever my first name was. So that's how it works. Next, so let's do a short exercise. Set the variable greeting to some greeting hello. Set the variable name to some name, and then set the variable called greet underscore name. So it concatenates greeting name and a space between them. So three steps. One is we have to create greeting and store greeting called hello, or if you wish, you could store something else. And then you can set the variable name to some name, and then set the variable greet underscore name to concatenate all of this. Just a practice of the entire thing. So let's call this as exercise 2. Okay, and let's create the code for this. Okay, so the first one that we have to do is greeting, and we create a variable called greeting, and let's store the value hello. Okay, and then we have another value called name. So let me put in my name over here. Okay, so let me put in my name over here, and have another greet. I hope that's greet name, greet underscore name equals greeting. Okay, plus I want to have a space between them, and then the name to be present over here, and then let's print greet underscore name over here. Okay, so see, hello Atullah. So you can see this is the string, and then this is the name. It gets added over here, and we have achieved our result. Now there are some ways to format strings. In this sense, sometimes you would want to embed some things in your strings. Okay, so there are different ways how to do it. For example, in Python 3.6 and above, we use something called an f string. So what an f string does is we write an f, and then within double quotes we can put in our sentence and whichever value you want to embed, right? If you remember, we cannot concatenate string with number, so maybe within a sentence if you want to write a number, then you would have a problem. But here, if you can see, we have x equals 10 and then we write formatted equals f. I have told you x times already, so the variable that you want to embed, you put it in curly braces, so the value gets substituted over here, and the new string now gets put inside formatted. So there was another method called dot format, which was used previously. In some places also you might find this method dot format. So in this particular method, if you see, there is a slight difference. Here we put in the sentence and then we have a curly brace without any variable being mentioned, but we have a dot format and then we put in this x, which would be substituted wherever the curly brace is present. So if you have multiple x, y, z, so you'll have to put that many curly braces in your string. There was an older method that used percent operator, and this was probably very similar to something you would have seen in a C programming language, percent %d. Okay, so percent %d, which stands for integer. So I told you these many times over here. Okay, so you have a choice, either use dot format or you use the f string. So either of that would be good, and I personally prefer using the f string, which is slightly easier because you can directly write the variable within the string and it does not cause any sort of confusion over here. So let's see, here we have an exercise. So set the variable first to your first name and the variable last to your last name, and then interpolate using the dot format method. So if you want to write a statement, first name this, comma, last name this. Okay, so you can do it with your own name, you need not do with this over here. Okay, so so I have already used that somewhere. So I'll just copy some of these lines. Okay, let's take this. Okay, and let's have it somewhere here. Okay, maybe I would want some text as well. Okay, so let's call this as exercise 3, and then let me write the code over here. So first name is this. Okay, I don't need to use name, so let me put first equals this and last equals this, and I need to write it in a sentence. Okay, so that I will put it in a f string. So f within double quotes, I'll write first name is first, okay, and then last name is last. Okay, so we'll try to see all of these methods. Okay, last. Now let's see how it runs, and then you should be able to see first name is this and last name is this over here. And let's try to use the other dot format method. To do that, we'll have to write print. Okay, and then I have this string. So first name colon and then this comma last name colon and then this curly brace over here and dot format. Okay, dot format. So first variable is going to be first, first, and then we have last. Okay, so let's see how this works, and this also produces the same result. So you are the best judge whether you would like to write it like this or you would prefer to do it this way. So either of this, if you find you are comfortable, you can go for, but this sort of method is only available with Python 3.6 and above. It will not be available earlier, but this one is available with up till Python 3.5. Okay. So then let's talk about string indices. So suppose given a string you want to access individual characters, you can use a string index. Okay, so index means the position. Okay, so you're talking about individual string positions over here. So you can use different indices. Let's see if I can just give a brief demo for that. Suppose we have this first, right? So if I do first first and I write 0, okay, so this square bracket produces the gives you the index. So you can see it gives the first letter A. That's in the 0th location. So please remember, whenever you're talking about index, in case of strings or lists or anything for that matter, when you write 0, we use the index 0, it means the first position. Okay, so the numbering starts from 0. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3 in that particular way over here. Okay, so whichever number you give, okay, so it is going to access that particular position over here. So suppose I change this 0 to 1. Okay, so it is going to T. Okay, it's going to print T. So that's T over here. By chance, if you wish to, if you go for some number like 6 or something, we don't have 6 letters over here. If you try to run that, you get index error. Okay, so you get an index error, string index out of range. So you have to be careful about that. You could also use negative index. Negative index, when you write, obviously there is nothing called -0, will begin with -1. So -1 means it will count from the back. So in this particular case, -1, first -1 produces L, which is the last number, last character present over here. So this is indexing. So you can pinpoint the location either by using the positioning that starts with 0 over here. Okay. So in string interpolation, data types are implicitly converted into string form. So when you are substituting, like when we saw in the f string, so we placed the variable within a string, so it got converted into the string format, and then it got printed. And you can also convert data variables into different data types. You can explicitly convert variables into different data types by using the built-in type as the function. Okay. For example, we have this value called decimal. Decimal equals 12.56, quite a huge number. And suppose you want only the integer portion. So integer is the variable equals int decimal. Okay, so you can see we are only taking the integer part out of that. You can do type conversions as well. So whenever you want to convert, you simply have to use the built-in type. So for int, it is int. For float, it is float. For string, it is str. For boolean, it is bool. So all of these things work. Okay, so when we go for lists and dictionaries, we'll also see similar things as well. So you can convert data types by mentioning the name over here. Okay, so here is a problem that we have: mileage converter using user input. Probably I haven't included any comments for that, so maybe we'll just borrow things over here. So let me first get the conversion. Suppose we have miles to kilometers. Okay, so let me just get the factor. So if you want to convert miles to kilometers, okay, so let's borrow the value. Okay, so 1 mile is 1.609344 kilometers. Okay, so and let us first go with without taking user input. Let's go with a simple assuming that we have some predefined value. So this is, I think, exercise number 3. Oh, so exercise number 4. Okay, so uh, take that. Okay, so suppose yeah, I have something in miles, so I have say 4 miles, and then I want to convert it into kilometers. Okay, so kilometers would be miles into 1 point, whatever that value was. Let's see, it's 1609344. Let me just copy this here, and yeah, so this will give us the number of kilometers. So you can see, let me write a simple F string. So um, miles is equal to um, km kms. Okay, so I'm just trying to be. Yeah. So let's see. 4 miles is 6.437376 kilometers over here. Okay. Now, as the question was asked that we should use user input, so let me write a second version of the code. Now, let's learn how to use the user input over here. So, suppose um, in order to use the user input, I use a special function in Python called input. Okay, so suppose I write miles equals input. Okay, input, enter uh, distance in miles. Okay, so this is the question that is going to be asked, and when the user in response to this question gives the answer, it will get loaded into miles, and then I can just borrow the previous code. So miles into 1.60934, so these many kilometers. Okay, so then in just copy this line and paste it. Okay, so the only change that you see over here is instead of having a value assigned, I am taking the input from the user. Let's see if our code is going to be correct over here. Let's first run that. So you can see it asks me enter the distance in miles. So I'll enter 4 just to match it with the previous case. I enter 4, and oh, it gives me an error. Okay, so what is the error it says? It says type error. Okay, and here you can see there is a a squiggly below this line over here. So it says can't multiply sequence by non-int type float. So we are trying to multiply uh, a sort of value to a decimal point, floating point over here. So now that's not possible because see, the problem is when I put in miles, even though I enter a number over here, it is actually of type string. Okay, even though I enter a number over here, the user input is automatically considered as a string variable. So I have to do a short type conversion, that is I need to write miles equals float miles. Okay, so I'll have to write something like this. So miles equals float miles. Okay, now what does that mean is whatever is the value that is inside miles, so we put in this, convert its type into float, and then I hope things will be better. Okay, so let's see. Now let me enter 4, and then whether it works. Yes, it works over here. So 4 miles is 6.437376 kilometers over here. So it worked in this particular case over here. Now I can even shorten this code. I need not write this line again. So instead of doing that, let's add a float over here. Okay. So I'll add a float over here. Okay. And then let's run that. So I enter 4, and then you can see the So I didn't have an extra line of code, so I wrote float inside that input. So basically, whichever function is in the sector, that will execute first. So input executed, uh, then whatever value that was retrieved was assigned to float, and then that got assigned to miles in the float format 4.0, and then here we multiplied miles to 1.609344, and you got the number of kilometers. So I hope during in this particular exercise you are able to see how we are taking in the input, as well as you are using this type conversion to do the job over here. Okay. So some questions again. Variables must be assigned before they can be used. Is it true or false? Any answers? What would be the answer? Whether variables must be assigned before they can be used. Yes. Any? What would be the answer? Whether variables have to be assigned or it can be used without assigning anything to it. Yes.
Said true.
Yes, it has to be true. You cannot use a variable without assigning any value to it. Okay. So, for example, let's have say new name or something. Okay. So this is a variable. I'm just writing the name, or let me simply write print over here. Okay. So print new name or something. I'm just trying to use the value without assigning anything to it, and let's see what error do we get. We get a name error. Okay, so we get a name error. So if you're trying to use a particular variable name without assigning any values to it, you get a name error. So at least you know what you'll have to do is create a variable and assign none to it. So instead of just using it straight away, I could do something like this: new name equals none. I can do new name equals none. So at least it is going to be of none type. Okay, so it is going to be of none type, and that can be visible to. Okay. Next one. So variables can be assigned to other variables, reassigned at any time, assigned at the same time as other variables, or all of the above. What is true in for the variables? Are all of the statements correct, or any one of these? What is your suggestion? Yes. Can you tell me what would be the answer?
Sir, all of the above.
Yeah, all of the above. You can assign other variables to a particular variable. It can be reassigned, as we saw. You can assign strings, we can assign numbers, you can assign floating points, and then the same variable can be assigned back to some other variables as well. Simple one again. So is 24 hours a valid variable name? Quickly, you could probably answer me. Is 24 hours a valid variable name? Yes. Oh, I don't know. Yeah. So basically, if you see, 24 is written over here, which actually defies the convention. Variable name should always begin with small letters. I mean, like, should begin with a letter. And in this case, it starts with a number, so it's not a valid number. Variable. So next one, my underscore first underscore variable. Is it a valid variable name? Yes. Okay. Since there are no answers, this is a valid variable name because it follows the naming conventions. The variable names are all in small letters, and each of them is joined by an underscore. So that makes it valid. It's a multi-word variable, but then it is connected by a underscore over here. So Python programmers prefer to name most of the variables using which one of these: lower snake case, upper camel case, capital snake case, or lower dash case. So the answer here would be lower snake case. So usually the variables are always small letters. If it is a multi-word, we join it using underscore. We use the upper camel case only for functions, and we use the capital snake case mostly for constants. Okay, there is no dash case. The hyphen is not a valid no variable name, cannot be a variable. So what values can the Boolean data type hold? Again, Boolean is a special type of data, is a special data type. It can only hold true and false values. So either true or false. Okay, and the T begins with a capital T and false begins with a capital F. Okay, so it's not small, or don't change the data type and think it works. Okay, so it's always going to be capital T RU and capital F ALSE. So this is how it works. Okay. So this is another thing. So the following is a valid string in Python 3. I have written my name in Oria. So that is very much allowed. Okay. So Python allows you. You could even try in other languages, Hindi, Bengali, or any other language per se. So you can assign that to a variable as well. Okay. So that is also allowed in this particular case. So what does it mean that Python is a dynamically typed language? It is this one. You can tell me why is it called a dynamically typed language? Any answers?
Sir, it can be assigned to different types.
Yeah. So Python variables can be assigned to different types and change types at will. That makes it dynamically typed because you can change, you can assign the different values to a particular variable, and that changes its type over here. Okay, so and briefly let's talk about Boolean and conditional logic. Okay, so briefly I'll just talk about it. We have read about Boolean characters, I mean the Boolean type of variable that holds true and false. Briefly, I can also talk about some conditional logic. Here we have already talked about the input. Input is a special built-in function in Python that asks the user for an input, and whatever the user provides, it stores in a variable. So here you can see name is input, enter your name here. So once you run this line, it asks you this question, and then you can write in your name, Tyron Lannister over here. So Game of Thrones. And then if you want to print that out, so you can just write name and then it prints out that particular name. And please remember, the input, whenever input function takes an input, it is going to be always in the string. Okay, it always exists in a string format over here. So how do you use conditional statements? Okay, so what are conditional statements? Conditional logic is when you are trying to take different paths. Okay, so given a particular condition, you want to go left or you want to go to right, or choose two different or three different or four different paths based on some sort of condition over here. So in Python, we have the if conditional for that. So here you can see if there is some condition, and then we don't use brackets, so we use colon over here. So colon is kind of a sort of a not a terminator, I would say. It indicates that there is a sub item under it. Okay, so colon indicates that the sub item. So if some condition is true or some is false, then do something over here. Now if, then we have if else. Okay, so if this is not true, then do something else. So you can have if a condition, do something else, do something over here. So if those who do not satisfy the true condition would obviously go to else over here. And if you have more number of choices, okay, so more number of choices you want to put in your checking conditionals, You can use the elif, okay, elif, elif, el stand again. If you it were to expand, you could call it as else if, else if, else. Okay, so if you are checking for multiple conditions, then you would use the elif over here. So if none of the if and elif statements are satisfied, it is going to use the else statement, or this is going to do something else over here. So here you have an example. You can see, so Arya Stark, if name is Arya Stark, then you print this. If it's Jon Snow, you don't know. And if either of this if the name does not contain either of these names, it is going to tell carry on. So you can see if the name variable has Jon Snow, it is going to print you know nothing. Okay, if it is Arya Stark, it is going to tell this, and if it is anything else, is going to give the carry 1 over here. So let's finish today's class with a very simple problem. So randomly choose a number between 1 and 10, check if it is 7. Okay, so for this I will have to do a bit of random number generation. Let me just take you to that. So let's do a simple Google search to find out the function for random. I think it is RAND, random, Python random. Okay, let's see, random integer. Okay, so we are using this rand int, and this rand int probably occurs in the module called random. Okay, let's see one example, maybe if you have some example. Yeah, import random, and then we have a different random dot random. So let me try to use it in a different way. Let's call it as exercise 5. Yeah, we should put in, so exercise exercise 5. Okay, and let's do some of these things. So first we are going to import random. Okay, and then we are randomly asked to choose a number, okay, between 1 and 10, right? That's the first part. I'm not reading the second part. We'll just do it in a while. So in order to do that, I'll do a random, okay, dot Google Colab would give you a list of the corresponding functions. Random, so I can give the start and stop 1 and 10. Okay, I hope it's 1 and 10. Yeah. So let's run and check what would be the output. And 3, and as many times I run it, okay, it should give me different numbers. Okay, you can see it is giving me different numbers. Okay, so you can do something like this, or you can um, you can even import this function. I think maybe when we talk about functions, we will focus more on that. You can even write from random, okay, import rand int, okay, and let's say if this works, rand int 1 comma 10. See, this also works. So either of this you could write. So if you don't want to make it length than it, you could do this as well. So, okay, so now let's focus on the next part and check if it is 7. Okay, so let's take up another variable. Let's call it as number. Okay, number equals rand int 1 to 10. So this is going to choose a number between 1 and 10, and then I am going to check whether that number is 7 or not. So if number equals 7, okay, so here I'm introducing the double equals, which is to check for a conditional. and I can see I use the colon over here, so I'll write print. Okay, uh, the number is 7. Okay, and you can use else, else. Okay, and then we can print diff different number. Okay, and maybe we want to show what is that number, so we'll use an f string. So let's put an f here, so f string. Okay, so I hope this is a good enough code. Let me run this, and it's a different number. Okay, the number is 7. So in the second try we got it. Okay, so this is an example of how you could use the if and else. Okay, so if this, then do this, else you do this. I have another number. Let's finish this as well. So this is slightly enhancing that problem. Provide a random number num between 1 and 1000. Check if the number is even or odd. Okay, check if the number is even or odd. Probably you know what is to check. How to check for even or odd is divisibility by 2. So if you try to divide by 2, if it is divisible, it's even, or if not, it is going to be odd over here. Okay, so let's do this part over here. Let's put in a text maybe. Let's call it as exercise 6. Okay, and I'll put in the code. So in this line, I have already written from a random import random, so I'm not writing over here. I'm not writing that sentence again. I'll just write num equals randint, num equals random, and then I write the range 1 to 1000. Okay, 1 to 1000, it could be any number, and then we check for divisibility by 2. So divisibility by 2, how do we check? We read about the different math operators. We read about plus, minus, division, integer division, and we read about a special operator called the modulo operator, which talks about remainder. Okay, so we are going to use the modulo operator here. So if num percent 2, okay, so if I'm going to divide the number by 2 and I want to check for the remainder, then I write this expression num percent 2. Okay, and I have to check whether it is going to be equal to 0 or not, whether it is equal to 0 or not. If it is equal to 0, I know that print. Okay, so let's use a f string, print num, okay, is even. Okay, this else, else, okay, print num is odd, even and odd over. Okay, so let's see, let's run it sometime. So you can see 359 is odd. Okay, and then we have 435 is odd, 347 is odd, 586 is even. So you can see these things. So we stop over here, and I hope you would try some of these problems on your own as well. Just go through this Google Colab sheet, whatever I have shared, whatever exercise I have done. And before we close, if there are any questions, I would like to answer that, or we could, stop here and then continue.